What if every prayer you've ever spoken has been keeping you further from God rather than bringing you closer? I know that sounds almost blasphemous. After all, we've been taught since childhood that prayer is our lifeline to the divine, our way of reaching out to God when we need help. But stay with me until the end of this video, because what you're about to discover might completely transform not just how you pray, but your entire relationship with the divine itself. For most of your life, you've approached God like a cosmic vending machine. You insert your prayers, asking for healing, begging for financial breakthrough, pleading for relationship restoration, and you wait for the universe to dispense what you've requested. Sometimes it works, most times it doesn't. And when it doesn't, you pray harder, you pray longer. You add more intensity to your petitions, convinced that if you just ask with enough faith, with enough persistence, God will finally hear you and respond. But here's the uncomfortable truth nobody talks about in churches or spiritual gatherings. Every time you ask God for something, you're actually declaring to the universe that you don't already have it. When you beg for peace, you're energetically affirming, "I am anxious." When you pray desperately for abundance, you're unconsciously broadcasting, "I am in lack." It's a spiritual paradox that keeps millions trapped in an exhausting cycle of asking, waiting, and disappointment. Has this ever happened to you? You pray intensely for something you desperately need, pouring your heart out with tears and trembling hands, only to watch the situation deteriorate. Even further, you cry out to God for clarity about a major life decision, but instead of answers, you find yourself more confused than before. You beg the heavens for relief from anxiety, yet the tightness in your chest only grows stronger. The racing thoughts only accelerate. But before we begin diving deeper into this profound shift, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. There's a reason your most fervent prayers sometimes produce the opposite of what you're seeking. It has nothing to do with God punishing you, testing your faith, or ignoring your cries. The truth is far more subtle and far more powerful than that. When you pray from a place of desperation, when your consciousness is consumed by what you lack, you're actually tuning yourself to a frequency that attracts more lack. Your energy, your vibration, your entire being is resonating with absence rather than presence, with emptiness rather than fullness. What truly changes when God becomes your only thought isn't about praying harder or asking better. It's about discovering something the mystics have known for centuries, but modern spirituality has almost completely forgotten. Something that transforms you from a beggar at heaven's gate into a living channel of divine consciousness itself. And that transformation begins with understanding why your current approach to prayer might be the very thing standing between you and the miracles you seek. Think about how you've been relating to God all these years. You've treated the divine like a helpful friend, a cosmic advisor you call upon when things get difficult. You ask for guidance on your decisions. You request intervention in your circumstances. You petition for blessings on your endeavors. But what if this entire framework is built on a fundamental misunderstanding of what's actually available to you? The spiritual masters throughout history, the mystics, the enlightened ones who walked this earth with a radiance others couldn't explain, they discovered something that mainstream religion almost never teaches. They found that the most powerful spiritual state isn't asking God for anything at all. It's not about crafting better prayers or developing stronger faith in your petitions. The real transformation happens when you stop trying to get God to help you and instead allow God to literally become your mind. Not your helper, not your divine assistant waiting in the wings to respond to your requests, but your actual consciousness, your thinking, your awareness itself. This sounds radical because it challenges everything we've been conditioned to believe about the spiritual journey. We've been taught separation, that we are here and God is there, that we are human and God is divine, that there's an unbridgeable gap we can only cross through prayer and supplication. But the hidden truth the mystics discovered is that this separation is an illusion. The gap doesn't exist except in our own perception. Right now, in this very moment, divine abundance is flowing toward you like a river that has never stopped running. Guidance for every decision you face, healing for every wound you carry, love that transcends anything you've experienced. It's all moving in your direction continuously, eternally, without pause. God isn't withholding a single thing from you. The universe isn't playing favorites, blessing some while ignoring others. The problem isn't on the supply side, it's on the receiving side. Your consciousness is tuned to the wrong frequency. Imagine a radio when it's set to 95.5 FM, but the broadcast you're seeking is on a 11.3. You won't hear the music no matter how loudly it's playing. The transmission is happening perfect and clear, but you're simply not positioned to receive it. This is exactly what's happening in your spiritual life. Your mind is so consumed with anxious thoughts about what you don't have, so busy generating controlling strategies to make life work according to your plans, so filled with the desperate energy of asking and seeking that you can't perceive what's already being given. If this resonated with you, subscribe and join this community of seekers exploring what it means to let God be your mind. Each video takes us deeper into living from divine consciousness. Behind the scenes of your conscious awareness, divine intelligence is orchestrating solutions, arranging circumstances, preparing breakthroughs. But when your inner radio is tuned to the frequency of fear and lack, you miss the revelations entirely. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because understanding the mechanics of this shift, how to actually retune your consciousness and step into this flow, changes everything about your daily experience. Right. I'm ready to receive in the comments. If this is starting to resonate with something you've always sensed but never quite understood, let me give you a simple metaphor that makes this crystal clear. Imagine there's a radio station somewhere in the cosmos broadcasting the most exquisite music you've ever heard. This broadcast runs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week without interruption. It's been playing since before you were born and will continue long after you're gone. The music contains answers to questions you haven't even asked yet, solutions to problems you're currently facing, guidance for decisions that keep you awake at night. Now, here's the critical question, and this is where most people miss the entire point. The question isn't whether this broadcast exists. It's not whether the station is powerful enough to reach you. The music is always there, always transmitting, always available. The only question that matters is this: are you tuned in to receive it? When your internal radio is set to the frequency of anxiety, when the dial is turned to the station of fear and doubt, when your consciousness is locked onto the channel of control and striving, you simply cannot hear the divine transmission. It's not that God has gone silent. It's not that the universe has stopped communicating with you. The broadcast continues perfectly, clearly, powerfully, but you're positioned on the wrong frequency, listening to nothing but static while blaming heaven for not speaking. This is the hidden truth about why your prayers seem unanswered. Divine intelligence is constantly transmitting breakthroughs directly to you. Insights about your career, revelations about your relationships, clarity about your purpose, solutions to your financial struggles. The transmission never stops. But when your mind is cluttered with fear-based thinking, when you're operating from that desperate energy of asking and begging, you're essentially trying to receive a clear signal through massive interference. And here's where the real impact of this understanding begins to transform your entire experience. Every time you pray from a place of desperation, something happens at an energetic level that most people never recognize. Your entire being starts vibrating at the frequency of lack. It's subtle, barely noticeable on the surface, but it's there in every anxious petition, every worried plea, every frantic request. Underneath your words, beneath your intentions, there's this relentless energetic signal broadcasting out into the universe. I am incomplete. I am broken. I am separate from what I need. Think about how this plays out in everyday human interactions. When someone approaches you from a place of desperate neediness, what happens? You instinctively pull back. There's something in their energy that creates distance rather than connection. The same principle operates on a universal scale. When you relate to life from the vibration of scarcity, Opportunities that might have opened for you remain closed. Doors that could have swung wide stay locked. Not because you're being punished, but because the universe is responding to your energetic signature, not your spoken words. You can say all the right affirmations, recite all the perfect prayers, but if your underlying vibration is screaming, "I don't have," life will mirror that back to you with more experiences of not having. This is the journey. Every spiritual seeker must understand the transformation isn't in your words, but in your frequency. Now I want to go even deeper into this topic because recognizing the problem is only the beginning. What happens when you actually shift this vibration, when you retune your consciousness to the frequency where God's thoughts become your thoughts, changes your reality in ways you cannot yet imagine? Type shifting frequency in the comments if you're beginning to see how this pattern has been operating in your own life. So, what actually happens when you make this shift? When you stop broadcasting lack and start allowing God to think through you, the transformation that unfolds is nothing short of extraordinary. And it happens at levels most people never even consider. The moment you surrender your anxious thoughts and let divine consciousness become your mind, an entirely different energetic reality begins to emerge. Instead of vibrating at the frequency of "I don't have," you start resonating with fullness. Instead of operating from that exhausting sense of separation, you hear God there. You begin embodying union. There's a quiet confidence that settles into your being, and it doesn't come from ego or positive affirmations you're forcing yourself to believe. It comes from a deep cellular recognition of something that's always been true. What God has, I have. What God is, I am. Now, I know how that sounds. It sounds arrogant, maybe even blasphemous, depending on your religious background. But this isn't arrogance at all. It's actually the most humble acknowledgement possible, because you're finally recognizing that your good doesn't come from your own clever thinking or relentless striving. It flows through you as divine expression. The same way a river flows through a channel it didn't create. And here's where this stops being abstract, spiritual philosophy, and starts showing up in your actual tangible everyday life. The impact of this mindset shift becomes measurable in ways you can observe and experience directly. Those decisions that have been paralyzing you with fear, the ones that keep you awake at 3 a.m. running endless scenarios in your mind, they suddenly become clear, not because you're trying harder to figure them out, not because you've done more research or consulted more people, but because divine wisdom flows through you naturally when your anxious thinking finally steps aside. It's like clouds parting to reveal the sun that was always there. You didn't create the sunlight, you simply stopped blocking it. Opportunities that were always present but completely invisible to your cluttered consciousness suddenly appear right in front of you. You wonder how you missed them before. The answer is simple. You were so busy generating your own solutions, so consumed with controlling outcomes, that you couldn't see what the universe was already arranging on your behalf. Behind the scenes, divine intelligence has been orchestrating circumstances, but you were too distracted by your own mental noise to notice. Even your relationships begin transforming in ways that seem almost miraculous. That tension with your spouse, your children, your colleagues, it starts dissolving without you forcing conversations or manipulating situations. The healing happens naturally because you're no longer relating to people from a place of need and desperation. You're not looking to them to complete you or fix your emptiness. You're engaging from wholeness, from peace, from the overflow of divine consciousness expressing through you. This is the hidden truth about spiritual transformation. It's not about acquiring something new, it's about removing the interference that's been blocking what was always flowing in your direction. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because understanding what happens is powerful, but learning how to actually practice this in the midst of your chaotic daily life, that's where the real revelations begin. Share divine consciousness in the comments if you're feeling this shift happening in your own awareness right now. The beautiful truth about this transformation is that it doesn't require elaborate rituals, years of training, or some mystical initiation. It begins with something so simple you might be tempted to dismiss it. Just 10 minutes of your day, that's all. But here's what makes these 10 minutes different from every other spiritual practice you've tried. You're not going to approach this like you're placing an order at a restaurant, rattling off your list of needs and demands to some cosmic server who may or may not bring hat you requested. Instead, you sit quietly, maybe in the morning before the chaos begins, maybe at night after everyone's asleep, and you say one simple thing within yourself: I'm now open to receive all that God is giving me. Notice the shift happening in that single sentence. There's no begging, no bargaining, no desperate pleading for specific outcomes. You're not trying to convince the universe to finally pay attention to your needs. You're simply acknowledging a truth that's always been operating. Divine supply is already flowing, and you're opening yourself to receive it. This moves you from that exhausting energy of pushing and striving to the natural flow of receiving the way the earth receives rain without effort or anxiety. Let me tell you about Maria, because her journey illustrates exactly what happens when you make this shift in real life, with real problems that probably mirror your own. For 3 years, Maria had been praying for financial breakthrough with an intensity that bordered on violence. She would literally shake her fists at heaven, demanding answers, begging God to fix her mounting debt and dwindling bank account. Every prayer was a negotiation, a plea, a desperate attempt to get the universe to finally hear her and respond. But here's the paradox she couldn't see. The more desperately she asked, the worse her situation became. It was like watching someone try to catch water with clenched fists. The tighter she gripped, the faster it slipped away. Her energy was pure lack, broadcasting, "I don't have," so powerfully that opportunities seemed to avoid her entirely. When Maria discovered this teaching about receptivity, her first reaction was fear. If I stop asking, God will forget about me completely, she thought. But desperation had brought her to a place where she was willing to try something radically different. She committed to 30 days of this practice, 10 minutes each morning and evening, simply sitting in quiet receptivity, opening herself to divine supply without demanding how it should arrive or when. The first 2 weeks felt like torture. Nothing seemed to be happening externally, and internally she felt empty, almost frightened by the silence. But behind the scenes, beneath her conscious awareness, a profound transformation was taking place. That constant knot of anxiety that had lived in her chest for 3 years began loosening its grip. Then the shifts started appearing. An unexpected freelance opportunity came through an old contact she hadn't heard from in years. A debt she thought was permanent got mysteriously forgiven through a company restructuring. A refund check she'd completely forgotten about arrived in the mail. None of these things came from her striving or clever planning. They emerged naturally as she stopped blocking the flow with her desperate asking. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because Maria's story reveals something critical about how divine intelligence operates when we finally get out of our own way. Right, I'm opening in the comments. If you're ready to practice this receptivity in your own life, what makes this principle even more profound is how it applies to every area of human struggle, not just financial challenges. Take David's story, for instance. For 5 years, he battled a chronic illness that doctors couldn't fully explain or cure. His prayer life had become absolutely exhausting, an endless cycle of begging, pleading, bargaining with God. He would spend hours visualizing his healing, trying to manifest wellness through sheer force of will, analyzing every symptom with mounting anxiety. The turning point came when he encountered this same teaching about surrender. At first, he resisted it completely. How could he stop fighting his illness? Wouldn't it be giving up? But as his condition continued, despite all his efforts, he realized his approach wasn't working. He decided to try something radically different. Instead of battling his symptoms with anxious mental strategies, instead of begging God to intervene and fix his broken body, David began sitting quietly each day with one simple intention: opening himself to receive the perfect health that existed as his divine inheritance. He stopped treating his condition and started treating his consciousness. He surrendered his thoughts about being sick and allowed God's thoughts about wholeness to become his reality. Within a year, something his doctors called spontaneous remission occurred. His medical tests showed significant improvement that had no logical explanation based on his treatment history. David had a different name for what happened. He called it learning to let God be his mind. But perhaps the most challenging territory for this practice is relationships, because that's where our need for control shows up most intensely. Jennifer's journey demonstrates this perfectly. For years, she had been on her knees every single night praying the same desperate prayer. Please change my husband, make him understand me, fix our communication, transform him into the partner I need. Every prayer was focused outward, asking God to manipulate someone else, to force external circumstances to align with what she thought would make her happy. She couldn't see that this entire approach was reinforcing the very separation she was trying to heal. Her asking was broadcasting, I am incomplete, he is wrong, we are broken. When Jennifer encountered this teaching about receptive surrender, she resisted it with everything in her. If I stop asking God to fix my marriage, it will definitely fall apart, she thought. But her current strategy clearly wasn't working. So she decided to experiment with something completely different. Instead of trying to control her husband or manipulate outcomes through desperate petitions, she began practicing something revolutionary, receiving divine love into her own consciousness. Each morning, she would sit quietly, surrendering all her judgments about what he should be doing differently, opening herself simply to receive God's love without conditions or demands. The transformation started so subtly, she almost missed it. She found herself responding to him differently, less reactive when he said things that used to trigger her, more peaceful in situations that previously sparked conflict. And as she let God be her mind instead of operating from her own anxious thinking, the entire relationship dynamic began shifting, naturally. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because what happened in Jennifer's marriage reveals something critical about how consciousness affects every relationship in your life. Put divine love in the comments if you're beginning to see how this could transform your own relationships. Here's what makes this practice truly revolutionary. You don't have to wait for those sacred 10 minutes of meditation to experience this shift in consciousness. In fact, some of the most profound transformations happen in the most mundane moments of your day. You're washing dishes, hands submerged in soapy water, mind wandering to tomorrow's meeting or yesterday's argument. Pause. Right there. Acknowledge God is here. You're stuck in traffic, frustration rising as the cars ahead refuse to move. Pause. Recognize God is here. You're standing in line at the grocery store, mentally calculating your to-do list, already exhausted by what's ahead. Pause. Notice God is here. This isn't asking God to show up or begging for divine intervention to make the traffic disappear. It's recognizing what's already true in this exact moment. The divine presence isn't somewhere else waiting for you to summon it through elaborate prayer. It's right here, right now, in the ordinary spaces of your life. These micro moments become profound resets of your entire consciousness. Each time you pause to acknowledge the presence, you're training your awareness to surrender those controlling thoughts that usually dominate your mind and to remain in receptive mode instead. The impact accumulates over time. Where you once automatically responded to every challenge with anxiety and frantic mental calculations about how to fix things, you begin responding from a completely different place, allowing God to be your mind, trusting that divine intelligence is already working through situations in ways you can't yet see. And this brings us to perhaps the most important shift in understanding how to work with challenges when they arise. When you face difficulty, whether it's a health crisis, a financial emergency, or a relationship breakdown, the automatic human response is to identify the problem in great detail and then ask God to fix it. You focus intensely on the condition, analyzing every aspect of what's wrong, and then you petition heaven to come in and change it. This seems logical, even responsible, but there's a hidden flaw in this approach that keeps you trapped in the very condition you're trying to escape. By giving all your attention to the problem, by making it the center of your consciousness, you're actually energizing it, keeping it alive in your experience. The breakthrough comes when you realize something radical. You don't need to treat the condition at all. You treat your consciousness instead. When facing any challenge, instead of focusing on the problem and devising mental strategies to solve it, you practice something completely different. You say within yourself, I relay this situation to divine intelligence. I open myself to receive God's perfect solution. I rest in the truth that infinite wisdom is already resolving this in ways I cannot see. Notice the fundamental shift happening here. You're not analyzing the problem. You're not asking for a specific outcome. You're surrendering your limited thinking about the situation entirely and allowing divine intelligence to work through it. This creates a gateway for solutions that your human mind, with all its limitations and fears, could never conceive. Now I want to go even deeper into this topic because there's one obstacle that stops most people cold when they start practicing this way. And understanding how to navigate it changes everything. Write treating consciousness in the comments if this approach is making sense to you. The biggest obstacle that stops people when they begin practicing this way is a persistent, uncomfortable feeling that overwhelms almost everyone. The feeling that you're doing absolutely nothing. This discomfort can be so intense, so unsettling that it drives people right back to their old patterns of asking, striving, and controlling. Because asking feels active, doesn't it? It feels powerful. It feels like you're taking charge, making things happen, being responsible for your life. Receiving, on the other hand, feels passive. It feels lazy. It feels almost irresponsible. Your ego starts screaming at you. You have to think. You have to figure this out. You can't just sit there and do nothing. You have to make something happen. The internal pressure to return to your old ways of operating becomes almost unbearable. But here's the revelation that changes everything. That uncomfortable feeling of doing nothing is actually a sign that you're making real progress. What you're experiencing is the dissolution of your habitual interference with divine flow. For your entire life, you've been operating under the assumption that you have to make everything happen through your own thinking and effort. Now you're learning to step aside, and it feels strange, almost frightening. The truth is, when you let God be your mind, you're not being passive at all. You're being receptive, which is profoundly active in the spiritual dimension. Think about how the earth receives rain. It doesn't strain or worry, yet something incredibly powerful is happening. Or consider how your lungs receive oxygen. There's no effort, no anxiety, yet your entire body depends on this receptive process. Receptivity is where the real power lives. And this brings us to the ultimate shift in understanding, the revelation that transforms everything you've ever believed about yourself and your relationship with the divine. Your entire life has operated from one fundamental belief. You are a separate human being disconnected from God, trying to get things from an external deity who may or may not respond to your requests. This belief has shaped everything. It's why you ask. It's why you beg. It's why you feel so desperate when prayers go unanswered. You're positioned as the spiritual beggar standing outside heaven's gates, hoping someone will throw you what you need. But here's the ultimate revelation, the hidden truth that the mystics discovered, and that changes the entire game. You are not separate from God trying to receive gifts from an external source. You are the very consciousness of God, receiving awareness of your own infinite nature. This isn't metaphor. This isn't poetic language designed to make you feel better. This is the actual truth about your identity. When you surrender every thought and let God be your mind, you're not getting something new that you didn't have before. You're removing the veil that has been blocking your recognition of what has always been yours. You're not becoming spiritual through effort and practice. You're recognizing the spirituality that has always been your essential nature, just covered over by layers of false identification. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because understanding this intellectually is one thing, but experiencing what happens when you actually live from this awareness, that's where the real transformation occurs. Share I am consciousness in the comments if this truth is beginning to awaken something in you. If you've made it this far with me, I want you to know something. You're not here by accident. The fact that you've stayed through this entire exploration tells me you're genuinely ready for this shift in consciousness. You're not just casually browsing spiritual content. You're actively seeking the transformation that comes from letting God become your only thought. I create these videos because I truly believe these insights have the power to change lives. Not through my words, but through the eternal truths they point toward. If this message resonated with something deep inside you, I'd love for you to join this community of seekers who are learning to move from separation consciousness to divine receptivity. Hit that subscribe button so you can continue this journey with us, because each video explores another dimension of what it means to live from divine intelligence, rather than limited human thinking. And here's what would mean the world to me. Drop a comment below saying, God is my mind. So, I know you were here, that you received this message, that something shifted in you as we walk through this together. Your presence in this community matters more than you realize. If this video created a connection for you, a simple tap on the like button helps this teaching reach others who are searching for exactly what you just discovered. It's a small gesture that creates ripples far beyond what we can see. There's a video right here that goes even deeper into how divine consciousness operates when you completely release the illusion of control. Click on it and let's continue this conversation together. I'll meet you there.